Our opinion, our analysis, not legal advice. Tonight's Trial Watch takes up most of the show, but we got a full lineup. Legal Minute and Red Flag both come straight out of today's Clancy testimony. And Evidence of the Night has a real update on the Nancy Guthrie ransom notes we covered a few weeks back. So, sourcing up front, tonight's Trial Watch content comes from courtroom pool reporters and multiple named outlets present in the room. So, Boston Globe, Boston 25, NBC Boston, CBS Boston, and the last time I checked, because of the way everything worked with timing, I couldn't get a more verified transcript. But I will say that I don't know if anybody's watching Full Day, which we covered this a little bit like in, I think, last episode. It's interesting that the ones that do like news reporting of the trial are not the ones that are doing like the live stream. So like if you watch the trial during the day, the live streams that
there's Idaho News, there's Court TV,
right?
Yeah, there's a few companies,
but they're not like the ones that are doing the play-by-play. You know, it's 3 o'clock. This is what happened.
Well, yeah, I mean it's a whole setup just to be live and,
I know,
and actually make it sound good.
I was just
which
wondering if
half the
anybody
time,
else had figured that out.
Half the time
like,
it don't even sound good.
Okay, well, anyway. So TikTok and YouTube, if you don't, it's neither here nor there. We'd appreciate it if you follow, like, subscribe, share, all those things. If you don't, to each their own, whatever. But right now, YouTube is carrying all of our replays, and tomorrow is Tuesday, right? August 11th, which means tomorrow, episode 2
will go out
of the Casewalker Chronicles, the particulars will go out on Spotify. So for those that are trying to catch the replays of the lives in audio form,
yeah,
tomorrow there'll be a new episode. So, are we ready?
Trial Watch.
Lindsay Clancy is on trial in Plymouth Superior Court, charged with 3 counts of murder in the deaths of her children, Cora 5, Dawson 3, and Callan 8 months. On January 24th, 2023, in Duxbury, Massachusetts, prosecutors say she strangled the children after sending her then husband, Patrick, out on an errand, then attempted suicide by jumping from a second-story window, which left her paralyzed, and depending on which platform or media outlet is reporting, that has been... But basically, I believe, the sternum up.
She's paralyzed.
Yeah, she's got arm and head movement, and that's pretty much all I've been able to see in the courtroom. So, her defense is arguing that she is not criminally responsible, that she was in the grip of severe postpartum psychosis compounded by medication at the time of the killings. Not guilty by reason of insanity, which is a legal defense arguing the person committed the act, but should not be held criminally responsible because a severe mental illness at the time prevented them from understanding that what they were doing or what it was they were doing was wrong.
And this case involves postpartum psychosis, a rare, severe psychiatric condition that can emerge after childbirth, involving symptoms like delusions, hallucinations, and a break from reality. Distinct from more serious than postpartum depression, postpartum psychosis is much more severe. Trial began roughly 2 weeks ago with opening statements and testimony from Patrick Clancy. Today, Monday, August 10th, is day 10 and the start of week 3.
So Dr. Jennifer Tufts, a psychiatrist who treated Clancy from late September of 2022 through January 23rd of 2023, the day before the killings. So she returned to the stand today for roughly 3 hours of cross-examination by defense attorney Kevin Reddington. Today's biggest development, and the one nearly every outlet led with, Tufts confirmed she never once met Clancy in person. Tufts testified that all 14 of her sessions with Clancy, including the final one on January 23rd, 2023, they were conducted by telehealth.
Yeah.
So under questioning, she acknowledged that over video, she could not see her patient's hands or legs and said she didn't feel there was anything she was missing by not meeting in person. And that was a considerable chunk of
testimony.
Yeah.
From today?
Yes.
The specific admission is reported consistently throughout ABC News, Court TV, and Boston.com. That's the press tier, not the certified transcript. So that's where all that reporting has come from. The exact wording, we're just paraphrasing here. So not quoting anything.
So Reddington also pressed her on language from her own practice's website, describing her as a specialist in postpartum care. Tufts pushed back, saying she described it as an interest, not an area of expertise, and denied that her care had been negligent. And there was a lot of back and forth right there at the beginning where he was, saying, was it an ad on your site? And she was kind of pushing back, saying, it wasn't an ad, it was my website. I don't do it, so I can't really. And I personally didn't change it, so that was kind of her thing at that point. And then as it goes later in, there's other areas we're going to discuss. So
here's context worth being precise about, because it's exactly the kind of jurisdiction detail we don't gloss over. Clancy herself has an active medical malpractice lawsuit against Tufts and 5 other providers. Norfolk Superior Court Civil Action 2682CV00081, filed by Clancy's own attorney. That's a separate civil case from the criminal trial happening in Plymouth. We've read the actual complaint directly.
So the complaint's core theory is what it calls, quote, disorganized, uncoordinated polypharmacy, end quote. So multiple prescribers across multiple providers, none coordinating care, which alleges obscured and accurate bipolar with postpartum onset diagnosis and contributed to a psychotic break. So the complaint also characterizes Tufts' telehealth therapy sessions as running as short as 17 minutes, which she did discuss today, because that was one of her things she poked back at, where the 17-minute figure is Clancy's own attorney's characterization in the civil filing. It's an allegation, not an adjudicated fact. On the stand, that, she was testifying her sessions ran roughly 25 to 30 minutes, and she was saying that the therapy portion of the session was 17 minutes.
Reddington put the basis question directly to Tufts over a prosecution objection that Judge Sullivan overruled. He noted she's a named defendant in what he called a large lawsuit, then asked her whether she understood the outcome of the criminal trial was major to the outcome of her own civil case. Tufts replied, "I don't actually know that."
So criminal defense attorney, I'm going to say Elsie Hershen, who has no connection to this case, told Boston 25 News that treating physicians in Clancy's position face a built-in incentive problem. It serves their own interest to testify that her care was adequate, since that also protects them from civil liability. So Hershen called it, quote, a bias in their testimony, end quote, and said it's fair territory for cross-examination. So this isn't just outside commentary anymore. So the defense put it to her directly on the record over an objection the judge overruled. So that means the court itself treated this as fair, relevant territory, not just a talking point. It doesn't make her testimony false, but it's a live bias question that's now formally part of this trial. So not just something we're speculating about from the outside.
On experience specifically, Tufts testified she received her board certification on September 12th, 2022, the same date Clancy's intake questionnaire is dated. In the 1 month before seeing Clancy, she said she treated only a couple of patients for postpartum depression at her practice, Astor Mental Health, and none for postpartum psychosis specifically, which she described as rare. Over her full residency, 2018 to 2022, she estimated treating at least 50 postpartum patients. Now, from an investigative side, this is a standard cross-examination architecture. You don't attack the first diagnosis, you attack the diagnostician's access and experience level, so that everything she says afterwards already has a question mark hanging over the jury's mind. So another term that we kind of wanted to break down in this is the black box warning. So the FDA's strongest required safety label on a medication used when there's evidence of a serious or life-threatening risk.
Tufts testified she reviewed Zoloft's side effects with Clancy, but didn't believe she specifically raised suicidal thoughts as a risk. Because the drug's black box warning centers on younger patients, typically capping around age 24, and Clancy was about to turn 36. So Tufts said she didn't believe there was evidence Zoloft causes suicidal or homicidal thoughts in older adults. On bipolar disorder, Reddington asked directly, Tufts, quote, "No, I assured that with her. She never had mania." End quote.
Reddington also pressed on treatment options. Tufts said she considered Zulresso for Clancy, but couldn't recommend it. Now, Zulresso is a fast-acting IV medication for postpartum depression, given as a continuous 60-hour infusion over about 2.5 days. At the time, available only at a small number of specialized facilities.
I will say I had never heard of that.
Never. Nope.
Like, I didn't know that was one of those.
I mean,
like,
I know like these IV bars are popping up everywhere.
Oh my gosh, yes.
But to have a well, I'm not going to say it's an antidepressant because I don't know, but to have a drug that is used for postpartum depression that's through an IV, I'd never heard of that before.
Yeah, that was news to me. So Tufts testified Zulresso was only available to her patients at Women and Infants Hospital in Rhode Island, so she had no access to it for a Massachusetts patient like Clancy. Reddington's Cross closed on Clancy's final appointment, January 23rd, which was the day before the killings, when she reported her worst symptoms yet, including a racing heart and feeling numb for 17 straight days. Tufts had just increased one of her medications. Reddington asked directly whether that increase contributed to what happened the next day. Tufts said she didn't believe so.
Reddington finished his cross just before the lunch break. On redirect, prosecutors worked to rehabilitate some of what he'd raised. Tufts testified she treated psychosis patients before, said her intake questionnaire doesn't screen specifically for postpartum depression because its symptoms overlap with depression generally, and said patients ultimately have to self-report their own thoughts. There's no test that shows what's happening internally.
Then back on Recross came the moment nearly every outlet flagged as the sharpest exchange of the day. So Reddington pointed to Tufts' own clinical note, which he read as describing Clancy as calm with pressured speech present. Tufts insisted he had it backwards, so that her note meant Clancy showed neither symptom. Pressed on the exact wording, she told him, quote, "I don't care what it says, I know what it meant," end quote.
So combined with the telehealth and malpractice suit material above, the through line of today's cross is the same in both places. A treatment system with real gaps in it. Whether that's geography or coordination between providers, Tufts was excused following what outlets described as a tense exchange with Reddington. Julie Paul, a psychiatric nurse practitioner who founded South Shore Health's perinatal behavioral health program, took the stand next, called by the prosecution.
So Paul testified Clancy was referred to her by Clancy's then mother-in-law, Susan Clancy, and that Clancy's anxiety began after her husband Patrick returned to work following his 12 weeks of leave. So a pattern Paul said she commonly saw in other patients. At intake, Clancy screened high for generalized anxiety. Paul testified she was not suicidal at that point and denied both suicidal and homicidal ideation when asked directly. So Clancy told Paul she'd had success with Prozac in the past, so Paul prescribed it, but Clancy later reported it caused feelings of disconnection and spaciness. Paul switched her to a different antidepressant, mirtazapine. After starting it, Clancy told Paul she was managing, but that sleeping longer would help, and they increased the dosage.
Now, Paul's arrangement with Clancy was always meant to be short-term. She testified she was planning to leave South Shore and relocate to New Hampshire, though she said she didn't recall telling Clancy that directly. She transferred Clancy's care to another provider before she left. Paul described Clancy in her sessions as organized and cooperative, a strong historian of her own symptoms, actively participating in her own care.
So Paul's cross-examination has not yet happened. It's scheduled for tomorrow, so everything above is direct testimony only, untested by the defense. And court resumes tomorrow. Before testimony continues, Judge Sullivan is expected to first rule on whether a third witness called by the defense is competent to testify. We're going to transfer or scoot along into our next segment, which is evidence of the night.
So Nancy Guthrie, 84, mother of Today co-anchor Savannah Guthrie.
Transition. Thank you, Amy. Sorry.
Disappeared from her Catalina Foothills home near Tucson, Arizona on January 31st. In late July, 6 months into the investigation, the Pima County Sheriff's Department released the full text of 2 purported ransom notes sent to a local television station in February. One demanding a multi-million-dollar Bitcoin payment, the second claiming Guthrie's had since died. We covered that release when it happened. Today's update is new. A credentialed outside expert is now publicly challenging whether those notes are real at all.
I'm probably going to say this name wrong because I wanted to say, like, does anybody recognize the name? And then I was like, I probably am going to pronounce it wrong. So they probably won't.
Chris Mohandi
is a forensic psychologist with a well-documented record in high-profile cases. So does anybody know that name? He's credited with helping persuade O.J. Simpson to surrender to police back in 1994 during the standoff. So in an interview published by Fox News Digital on August 9th, he laid out why he doesn't buy the notes as genuine.
Mohandi pointed to several specific red flags. The notes were sent to a news outlet rather than used as a private negotiation channel. They explicitly announced themselves as ransom demands. And the pronoun usage shifts inconsistently between we and I across the 2 letters. He also downplayed the significance of specific crime scene details in the first note. A smartwatch near Guthrie's bed and a damaged backyard floodlight that investigators had treated as a possible sign of authenticity, saying those details could plausibly have reached someone secondhand rather than only being known by the actual abductor.
So this is one expert's stated hypothesis, not an official determination. Mohandi himself repeatedly frames it that way, and federal law enforcement sources have told reporters investigators remain split, some confident the notes are fake, others still treating them as possibly genuine. So no suspect has been named and no arrest has been made in Guthrie's disappearance.
Mohandi's own read on what actually happened, he thinks this looks like a burglary gone wrong, quote, a burglary gone wrong, and then attempts to cover things up, end quote. Though he was careful to call that a hypothesis, not a conclusion, and said investigators are right to keep pursuing every lead, including the notes themselves.
So this is a good real-world example of something that PI work runs into constantly. Evaluating a written document for authenticity is not always just about the gut feeling. It's actually about specific, describable inconsistencies. So word choice, tone shifts, who the message was sent to, and why. And Mohandi is not saying the notes are definitely fake. He's showing his work on why he's skeptical. And this is exactly the kind of reasoning that's useful for the public to see rather than just a verdict handed down.
So with that, we will move on
to the legal minute.
The legal minute.
Do you think I can do it in a minute?
No.
Absolutely not. Tonight's legal minute comes straight out of what we just watched happen in Tuff's testimony. So no new case needed, just plain language breakdown of the order of operations you saw play out today.
First definition we're going to talk about is redirect examination. So that was used in court. A redirect examination after the opposing side finishes cross-examination of a witness. The side that originally called the witness gets a turn to ask follow-up questions, usually aimed at repairing or clarifying anything the cross-examination cast doubt on.
And then your next is the recross examination. So after redirect, the original cross-examining side can come back one more time, but only on the specific new things that came up during redirect, not a fresh run at the whole witness. Today's sequence was a clean textbook example. Reddington's cross ran all morning. Prosecutors used redirect to rehabilitate Tufts on her credentials and to explain why her intake process doesn't specifically screen for postpartum depression. Then Reddington got recross and used it to zero in on that critical note dispute, the sharpest exchange of the day. And if you have not watched that, his cross was very well done.
I could find it. We could watch it right now.
All of that to say, this is where trial strategy actually lives, which is what I just talked to you about. So redirect is damage control and recross is the other side making sure damage control doesn't get the last word. Whoever gets the final question in front of the jury before a witness steps down has a real advantage. That's not an accident. That's why the order of operations is built the way that it is.
That's what we call clear as mud legal jargon. Go buy the t-shirt.
But not legal advice. This is not legal advice. This is just our analysis, our opinion.
All right, our last segment of the day is our red flag. A system with no one coordinating. It's a pattern. We're pulling directly out of tonight's Trial Watch material because it's worth sitting with on its own. Between September of 2022 and January of 2023, Clancy's psychiatric care ran through at least 4 separate providers. Dr. Tufts at Astor Mental Health, nurse practitioner Julie Paul at South Shore Perinatal Behavioral Health Program, and a psychiatrist at McLean Hospital during a January inpatient stay, and a partial hospitalization program at Women and Infants Hospital in Rhode Island. Testimony and filings so far show limited direct coordination between them. Tufts testified she never obtained records from Clancy's other providers, relying instead on Clancy to self-report.
So the characterization of this as a systemic failure is the civil complaints framing, not an adjudicated finding. So we're not asserting it as a proven fact, and it's a separate question from the criminal trial's determination of responsibility.
From the investigative side, this is a familiar failure mode. Not one bad actor, but a handoff problem. Every provider is operating off what the patient tells them, with no shared file and no one owning the full picture. That's not unique to psychiatric care, but the stakes here made the gap catastrophic. This is the same shape of problem we flagged with the flock safety segment a few episodes back. Not one person doing something malicious, but a system with no one positioned to see the whole board. Different case, same crack.
You can't form any kind of conclusions or get a full picture unless you have all the facts.
Yes. That's our substantive segment for tonight with our 4 segments.
Yes.
We had the trial watch where we covered day 10 today.
Yep.
Of the Lindsay Clancy trial. We switched it up tonight. We went to evidence of the night.
I got to keep you guys on your toes.
Where we talked about, I don't remember. It's Monday.
Oh my gosh.
It's Monday.
What kind of a production is this?
I know.
Lord.
So let me throw back the title card so I can get a recollection here.
Wow.
Thank you. Evidence of the night where we covered Nancy Guthrie and the new challenge to the ransom notes. From there, we moved on to the legal minute where we discussed the redirect and recross, kind of the courtroom procedure between the Commonwealth right now and the defense attorney. And our red flag we just finished where a system with no one coordinating and consulting.
Yeah, and I think that's a whole thing. Like that's not just this case. That's not just the court system. That's not just medical. Like
that's much.
That
everything.
Can encompass a lot. That's tonight's show. Trial watch, evidence of the night, legal minute, and red flag.
We're back Wednesday, same time, hopefully same place.
Never know.
If something else moves before then, we'll have it.
So, all the things, give us a follow. Thanks for being here.
Subscribe to YouTube for the replays. Go to Ko-fi. Links in the bio.
This has been the Casewalker Chronicles, The Particulars. I'm Lacey.
I'm Nic.
And we'll see you Wednesday at 9. You guys have a good night. Thank you for being here.